Hey, this is Ann Renee. Welcome to the Aha Podcast, where we discuss and dissect TV and film with our unique brand of consciousness, humor, insight, and perspective, all translated and transpired in love. We are talking The Affair on Showtime. We're at the series finale, season 5, episode 11, and I am so psyched. Gwen girl, you gonna get started?
No. So first of all, this is Anne Renee and Gwen girl.
Oh!
Oh my God. Okay, so it is customary that I start, but I'm going to start off by saying hated it.
Oh no!
Yeah, she didn't know it was coming. Hated it. So disappointed overall. There were highlights for me that I will discuss, but overall it was just sentimental trash.
It was sentimental, I will say
well,
that.
let's just see if we can get her on board with the trash.
Not trash, but it was sentimental.
Okay,
yes.
so some parts were trash, and there were a couple of sensitive parts. But anyway, for a series finale that in the middle of the season had new characters and all kinds of things, I just did not like the way it finished these details off. I really didn't. Again, I just think that there was so much material out there that could have been discussed relationally. I don't know.
Yeah, I'll say this before I get into the parts where I thought that were interesting. I'll say that there were a lot of observations I had as I watched, but I'll say this: I don't know why we had to have a Sasha man. I don't know why. You know, I don't know why. I don't know why we had to have that episode that was totally Joni's point of view.
Right.
You know, even I'm going to stop complaining about Joni, and I'm going to stop complaining about it being 2053. But I still don't understand why it had to be so much Joni.
Yeah.
From where we got to in the series finale, I think we could have still had a punch, if you want to even call it that, with a little bit more of Joni and a few more episodes maybe, without all Joni in that one episode, because that's the one that took me out. It was that one where it was totally her point of view. So, and I also don't know why we got Janelle and her ex-husband in this season, only to have her, break up with Noah, get back with her ex-husband, with whatever that means, and then have no other connection with her in this season. I didn't even see why that was needed.
Especially since they brought such dynamic to, the episodes. I mean, this was something you were interested in, Janelle. That was a very powerful.
Well, maybe it was we were interested.
Well, it was interesting.
Yeah, I agree. I'm just saying, maybe people feel that way about Janelle the way I feel about Joni.
Yeah, but I thought the writing dictated that interest too, though. I mean, you're looking at this powerful woman, not to mention that she's an African American woman, who also has this husband, that ex-husband, with all of that unresolved energy, and and you've got Noah coming up, so it was interesting in terms of an affair, a relationship. I thought it was good viewing, and to just let that go anywhere, and then now we're slithering in on our bellies with Sasha Mann, which was far less intriguing and interesting, except for the points where we're looking at him being this diabolical character and just a master manipulator, that kind of thing. But Janelle and her ex and the son,
Carl,
it had great promise in terms of the emotions that it could elicit from the viewers, and even where the storyline could have gone. So I thought that was a great misstep to start in that direction, unless they decided that there wasn't any way to bring that into the series finale. And so I'll just kick off with part 1, which was Noah, and we open at the ex-in-laws home, the day of Whitney's wedding. And so Noah is organizing this flash mob choreography, with the rest of the family. And this whole part one with Noah, they showed a more sensitive side of him, and it's not a side that we haven't seen, because that's one thing about Noah. When he is present in those moments, you do get a sense of depth to him. And the only thing that's ever really come up to put like just a magic eraser on all of that is that in those moments, sometimes his insecurity will cause him to turn all of the focus on him. And he seemed to be very adamant about making sure that Whitney had the wedding that she desired, and not impose himself in that. So I thought he was very composed in his role as a father. He had moments with everybody. I think I kind of felt that they went a little too far in trying to resolve all of wrap up all of the relationships that were kind of skewed. So Colin, Trevor, Martin, just everybody was tied up in a nice bow. And even when he was leaving to get out of there before Whitney came, and his father-in-law Bruce was just random. He was in one of his dementia throes, and he rescued him, and he pretended, along with Bruce, that to be Bruce's brother, whom I assume they thought had died in the war or something like that. So he, you saw a very caring side of Noah, which was good to see, and I think what made it even more heartwarming was that there wasn't, another woman in the wings waiting. There wasn't somebody who was going to go to and even screw this up. This Noah that we saw in part one was a father, he was a husband, and he was a good man, so I think they did a very good job in portraying that. So, I was, it was a little kind of tongue in cheek for me, but
then that's funny. I just wanted to stop at this point because I didn't think at all that any of the relationships were tied up. I always like when we have these different perspectives, because I'm remembering back maybe 2 episodes when Gwen Girl totally was feeling the warmth of the Colin reveal, the Whitley portrait, and and I don't want to speak for Gwen Girl. She's capable of speaking for herself, but there is love present and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, yeah, I'm not feeling that. I thought that was a little bit heavy-handed, but it could have been because they just beat the crap out of us with the whole fur cat and the Noah and the Me Too and all of that. So I'm saying that to say, contrast with this episode, I actually thought, as opposed to wrapping up relationships, particularly with his children, with Trevor and Martin, and with his new son-in-law, that Noah was beginning relationships with them. I didn't think he was okay, now they're going to be best buds. I think that's why...
and that's not what I meant. I didn't mean that that there was a resolve there, though. He seemed to be humble in resigning himself to whatever their perspectives of him were, and so then in each one of those cases, it wasn't what he thought, so for me, it was just kind of, okay, well, they're wrapping it up. At least there's some honesty there, and he wasn't combative, because usually he's defensive, and so that's what I meant. He's usually fighting something, and he had resigned himself to what he thought the truth was, and much to his amazement, it wasn't what he thought.
Yeah, and I'll say that one of the things you said I did want to talk about, because I had that same observation, was it was an opportunity for us to see Noah get back to being a good dad. And if there are others who think he wasn't, I think they're mistaken, only because his children have said he was such a good dad. And that is why the affair and the ultimate breakup of his family hurt them so much, because he was present and involved in his family. So I was happy that like Gwen Girl, particularly when he wanted to get a glimpse of Whitney, I don't want to call him the old Noah, but the Noah that we have come to know largely would have popped out and just said he loved her and he wanted to get a look at her and all of that. And this time he just hid, and he still got to see her, but he didn't reveal himself. He didn't come out. He didn't betray her wishes, as ridiculous as I think those wishes were for him not to be at that wedding. He respected the boundaries she set, and so he just watched her without her knowing it. I think he went ahead and planned the wedding as he and Whitney had talked about, even if he couldn't be there. And I think as a parent, oftentimes we do the best for our children, even when they're not appreciative of it or they don't even know. Right. So I think it was really Noah getting back into that solid daddy mode, and I was very happy about that. Yeah. And it didn't make me think, oh, Noah is, this tremendously great guy. It just made me think that Noah is, like I've always thought, Noah is a tremendously flawed guy, but there is such a big part of him that I don't think any of, I'm looking at Gwinger, I don't think we ever thought he didn't love his children. Not at all. So there is that, and then there is this humanity that resides in him. Is just oftentimes has been so clouded by ego, and but to say a man has an ego is to be redundant. So that's all I wanted to say. And then
I think what also made this more authentic too. He didn't, in episode 10, he didn't think he had anything of value left. Mm-hmm. And then having escaped this fire and all of that stuff, and realizing that he had something that he wanted to live for, it made his presence more authentic, and showing up as a father. It gave him some worth. It showed what was more important than what he may have wanted, which would have been to walk her down the aisle. What was more important was supporting her and giving her that childhood dream, and I love the way he just made sure that everybody understood how important this day was for Whitney.
I got a lot of observations about this wedding, because I don't want to jump, but I do. I think because weddings, I guess I should say I was surprised at my own reactions to the wedding. I always like that when I surprise myself. And weddings, I tell you, they still make me a little weepy. I didn't cry because but I got a little teary-eyed at some points. But when you're starting off with Margaret and Helen and Whitney in a room, and it's such craziness. Yeah, negativity. But there was something interesting I wrote down about Whitney can be so harsh. I'll just say that.
And her mother
her mother, and yet when Helen's mother, Margaret, is equally as harsh to Helen, she calls her a monster. So I was just amazed that she couldn't see that she was treating Helen exactly the way that Margaret treats Helen.
Now that didn't amaze me in the least, because that is usually we act like that, and that because the difference is that is not how we view us.
Yeah.
And so she didn't view
the amazement is how she doesn't see it.
Yeah, but that's usually that's usually the case. And unless that's spiritually discerned, where something kicks in and tells you, you know what, you're out of order. We usually, the very thing we hate is the very thing we become. And so then her harshness was on point. It was familiar. She learned that at her grandmother's knee.
That's true.
Definitely she was under her tutelage, to the point where the grandmother, she would pay to play. It's just, she rewarded a lot of Whitney's bad behavior, throughout. So Whitney in this, I think, fit of, not wanting to be controlled by anything. She's lashing out at everything, because I think that for Whitney, they could have really explored what she was discovering about herself. And I like the fact that in part 2, I think it was part 2, when Helen asked her why was she getting married, did she love Colin, and
Was she in love?
Yeah, was she in love? And she said she didn't know. And that was amazing to me because I didn't think she was there in terms of that she didn't know. I just thought she wasn't quite ready for that kind of commitment. But that surprised me. But what also surprised me too was that it seemed that Helen, based on what she said to Noah, Helen wasn't present at her own wedding either. So I was wondering if Helen saw, if she was looking at herself,
No, I didn't. Well, that wasn't my take. My take wasn't that. I think, and that's why I wanted to bring up the Margaret thing, because I think there have been conversations during the series. We've talked about Whitney and how she is her mother's daughter at some point, and where she has been her father's daughter at some point. And by that I mean she is resembling the qualities that we have known Helen to possess, and Noah to possess. And so in that moment with Margaret, I guess it was really stark for me how she was her grandmother's granddaughter in that moment, yet she fights to protect her mother, and she fights her mother. And Whitney has always been, I'll say again, quite interesting that she can come fiercely from one side and immediately fiercely from the completely opposite side. And like in 30 seconds, it can change. But what I did make note of in that conversation with Helen was that for all of you're codependent and it's not like you and the way you have with Dad, is that she is jealous. That was my thought. She is jealous or envies the relationship Helen has with Noah. Every time she is asked to say something about her relationship with Colin, she uses Helen's relationship with her dad to knock down. So when Helen asked, "Are you in love?" she said, "Not like you." Yeah. Not like you. I don't, and I can't remember immediately what she said after that, but she said, I can go all day without even thinking about him. I don't have to know he's okay. So in that moment, I was like, wow, here it is. I've been dunce, because she envies that relationship as much as she's tried to make it a bad thing to Helen. It's codependent and all that foolishness. It's really, I don't love like that. And I don't know how you do that.
Yeah. And I think, that's a good point, because that was my observation. And my observation was that there was a fear of not being able to love like that.
Perhaps.
And so then it would be better to, debase it than to venture in and try and understand it, So that's exactly what I got out of that, that I don't even know how to do that. I don't know how to be that, And so then even what she thought she had with Colin, she second guessed it, because at the end of the day, what she called codependence, I think she looked at where they may have been passionate. It's just like, again, I don't love like that. It's like, I don't know how to do that. That's not safe for me. And it wasn't a good look on her mom, at times or whatever, and then that speaks to not being able to be vulnerable, because what does that look like, And so then if you're constantly fighting it, it's because you don't want to be that, you don't want to give yourself to that, So I think that was a lot of Whitney's story, from all that she had seen and all that she had believed in initially, and then what transpired with her mom and her dad, it would make loving that deep fearful, because it made a messy woman of Helen. In some cases and in some spaces, and I'm sure that even Whitney observing her mother with Vic, it wasn't what she saw with her own dad, because she deemed what they had as a forever love, kind of thing, to the point of it was detrimental to her mom's life. And even
I think maybe that is even why Whitney, when she visited in season 4, she was all hyped up on Vic. I think it's because she recognized, and I don't know if you remember this, she recognized that the way Helen loved Vic wasn't the way Helen loved Noah.
Right.
And so that was manageable.
Yeah, right.
That was manageable. And I just want to say something about this thing. And here I go again, because I'm so glad. I've said before that I totally identify with Helen, so I always have to step back and recognize that I am identifying with Helen. But that thing Gwen Girl was just talking about, I wrote down in my notes that I wrote that thing. That's exactly how I wrote it. Because there's this thing that I've been addressing all season about, and I've used words like you've been in this 20-some year marriage, you have the same memories, you have 4 kids, you have this life together. And I've also recognized that Helen never stopped loving Noah, and that a lot of her life choices, particularly with Vic, for that little time with little Max, God knows with Sasha, was all in a reaction. Was all in a reaction to her feelings about Noah. So you can't say you're over somebody if your feelings for that person is dictating all of your choice. So that thing though is what I have when Helen is looking at in the beginning when this episode starts and they're rehearsing the the mob flash, the dance flash mob, okay. And Helen is kind of checking it out, checking out the dances, checking out her kids and Sierra and Sierra's boyfriend and everybody. And there's a moment when Noah is just looking at Helen. Yeah. Looking at Helen's enjoyment, looking at all of this taking place. And I write that thing. And then there's a moment, fast forwarding to the motel, when Helen leaves to join Noah at the hotel, and she's showing him, she's videotaped the mob dance. Mob. And Noah is watching it and enjoying it and smiling, and Helen is just looking at Noah, and it's again that thing. And I think I don't know, for some reason for me, maybe I'll just talk about my own validation, is that there is so, and this is what I've always loved about Noah and Helen, there is so much history in that relationship. So much history. I mean, even before their children. You're talking about a relationship that started in college. So all of the love, all of the regret, and I don't even want to talk about regret, because here's another thing I want to go to something else. My observations about this episode, I'm gonna get back to Helen and Noah, was it had a lot to do with forgiveness and letting go of the past. That may not be completely what it was, but Helen forgiving Noah, the kids forgiving Noah, and this could just be the beginning. It's not like it's all wrapped up in a big old yellow bow and everybody's going to live happily ever after. But the kids beginning to forgive Noah, Noah forgiving himself, Joni forgiving her mother, Allison, and how Cole, to our surprise, had not forgiven Allison. And we can talk about that a little bit later. But in that room, and I'm going back to Helen and Noah, I was happy only in that if Helen had made a proclamation and here is what I want and it's Noah, then damn it, have Noah. Like, I was just happy that this is what I want. And I think what happened at the wedding, and is that you're watching your oldest child get married. So now Whitney is beginning a life on her own. I mean, Martin is in college. Trevor's in high school. Okay, my little Stacey is 12, but eventually all those people are going to be out of your house. So at some point you got to recognize and realize, what life do I want? And if the answer is, after all that we have been through and talked about and came out on the other side, like last week's episode was kind of, let's go through all the heartache and pain. Let's discuss all that has happened in the dissolution of our marriage and the affair and all of that. And we came out on the other side, still having some feelings for each other. And if that happens to be love, then that is what it is. And so I was very pleased with Helen that for once she wasn't reacting right to anything and to anybody, particularly the people who are closest to you. And I don't mean your parents, I mean your children, who dictate your life, and then they go off and live their own lives. Yeah. And so I was very happy that she came to that hotel and said, this is what it is. and I'm just going to follow through on this. And I like at the I liked a lot of things about it. I'm just going to be very honest. But in the moment where they were making love, she says, this doesn't mean anything, and Noah say, I do, and tomorrow we can just, go out on separate ways, I do. And then Noah says, you want to try this again? And she said, I do. And I just thought that was like one of the most honest moments of that relationship and of this episode. And I liked it so much because I've always thought there was something real about Helen and Noah's relationship.
Yeah.
And it's that thing.
Yeah.
That thing, I think, only this last point. I think marriage is so intimate and so complicated that oftentimes it is especially hard for anybody outside of the marriage to know what's going on, mm-hmm. and giving you all kind of advice that's not solicited oftentimes. But sometimes it's even so complicated or mm-hmm. difficult to manage to land on, mm-hmm. that the two people in the marriage just kind of throw it off.
Right.
So I find it hard. There was just a lot about what Helen said in that motel that I really liked. That about honesty and truth and about where I am right now. And if at the end of the day, if where she was landing back on Noah, then I was totally fine with that.
Yeah. All right. So you said a lot of things that I was like tab when I was watching. So mm-hmm. at the hotel, what I was impressed with, and even to be transparent, identified with, was when she was talking about she realized that she had never really been present. Mm-hmm. She's always managing the next problem, the next whatever. And that Noah would always be present. Mm-hmm. And I think, I know what it was about, because he asked her why didn't she jump into the dance, mm-hmm. and, she had an excuse, for all of that. And I thought it was a powerful moment. You mentioned that marriage is very intimate, and not only is it intimate, it's intricate, mm-hmm. And to your point about, people from the outside looking in, they can offer all of this advice. They can very pointedly say, well, that's stupid. Oh, I wouldn't, mm-hmm. not knowing the intricacy of the pattern and the pieces that are in place, mm-hmm. how you manage this, how you cover this, and to Helen's point, I understand what it feels like in a marriage to just go ahead, because you're always, it's like being a chess player. You're so many moves ahead, because you kind of know it's like, man, this and this is going to bring us that, and you jump ahead, mm-hmm. and you miss a lot of what's there before you. Mm-hmm. Even to go a little deeper spiritually. There's a scripture, and it's in the 23rd Psalm, and it says, God prepares a table for us in the presence of our enemies. Mm-hmm. And more often than not, we are so trying to problem solve for the next thing that we don't even see what we're equipped with right before us. And mm-hmm. so being present does bring that to you. And so with Helen being present, it allowed her to see that as a mother, she loved her children, and as a wife, she loved her husband. Mm-hmm. She loved Noah, and as a woman, she just really needed to deal with all of what that looks like for her future. So, just giving herself the space to be present, mm-hmm. allowed her to have it all in that moment. So I was excited that she was able to, reconsummate her relationship with Noah, regardless of what it was going to be. And I would think, in my imagination, based on the fact that he was reading that book to her, and correct me if I'm wrong, did Stacey write that book?
Stacey. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so he's reading Graveside, a book about Montauk and the experiences and all of that. Mm-hmm. And he said, "My love," I think he said, mm-hmm, he said mm-hmm, when he was mm-hmm. reading it to her. And so then that let us know that there was intimacy. So, and she was also on her tombstone, it had Salloway, not Helen Butler, and she had dropped the name. So in my imagination, they had,
they had 30 more years.
Yeah, they remarried and had that time. So I thought that was great. And so I love the confession, and I love the vulnerability it took for her to be able to be with Noah, because it wasn't sex for the sake of sex. I didn't think that Helen was like, I'm horny and, I don't have Sasha or da-da-da-da. They, this was a great occasion. This, their oldest, daughter, was married. The dad, behind the scenes, made it all happen. He did what Helen couldn't do. Made it all happen. And then nobly walked away, and so that endeared, that was very intimate, to see that, and it made it safer. I felt like it made it safe for Helen, because she really saw that, I think you said earlier about old Noah would have popped his head up some kind of way. He would have stayed for the vows, he would have used that situation when, instead of hiding Bruce, when she was pulling up in the limo, he would have used Bruce as a way to, see her and say something, plead his case, if you would.
Yeah.
And he did. And so
he would have sent the flowers back that Sasha sent and said, take that up at the truck.
No, he would have kept the card, and it wasn't any of that.
Yeah,
but
or send the flowers back even, so you take this away.
Destroyed them, something. Yeah. But and I think one of the most precious things that I saw pass between Helen and Noah was when Helen told him, I think it's time. And he said, yeah. It was like time for you to leave.
Right.
And so there was something passing between them. It's like, you really aren't going to be able to stay. There was no fight there. That, it was just, we're going to, we're in this together, to the point of, one of us is not going to be here, because we're so in this together that this is how we're able to walk in tandem, by you being able to, walk away and, not put up a fuss. So that was touching for me. So I love the fact that Helen was really seemingly going to get what she deserved, right or wrong. I saw her standing up for herself. It's like, I don't have to, the only person that I need to please, in this moment is me. So to the point where she was present for Whitney and left, let me go find, my man. And that's exactly what she did. So I thought it was, I thought that was beautiful. And
I'll just say about the present stuff. I don't, when she said, I don't really remember our wedding, to Noah, and he said, you were stoned out of your mind. And not being present, like she didn't think she had been present. I don't know what I thought about that, except that maybe Helen was not big on weddings. Maybe she was big on marriages.
I don't think that. I think she was feuding with her parents. I think she always loved Noah, but
no. I said she wasn't big, because she said to Whitney, and I don't remember the words, when they were walking out of the room, like, what? This is just a very expensive day. Like, this has nothing to do with the rest of your life. So I think it had, I think perhaps she was feuding with her parents, though she wore the dress she wanted. She was marrying a man she wanted. I think it was like marriage was some celebration that they wanted. I'm sorry, the wedding was some celebration that they wanted. This wedding was a celebration that Whitney wanted. I'm more interested in marriage. And that's why the question to Whitney was, are you in love? Are you in love? Because it's more important to Helen what happens the day after the wedding.
But that's wisdom speaking.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
So I think more
they kept using. They were using a lot of present and not present. When I think I think it was present about the real stuff, because women and men, but mostly women, get really involved
caught up in the day.
And that wedding, which is nothing other than a ceremony, a party, a ceremony, and a party, and Helen was, to me, very, very much invested in the next day, and with Noah the next 20 some odd years, and with Whitney the next 20 some odd years.
That's what I was going to say. It's like we've taken the wedding and made it a show, when the wedding is really about now you have to show up, because there's covenant there, and so I agree on some parts that she was asking Whitney a powerful question. It's just like, what is this about? But I think that was a lot of Helen's issue, because she was wrestling with, what is this about? It's like, what am I doing? It's like, you're supporting Whitney, who's being a royal bitch. She's coming against this man that you love, her father. So I thought a lot of that was Helen's kind of pushback. I think it was some chagrin, because your dad's doing all of this. She's doing things that I can't even do. I can't do for you. He's doing it in secret, and you're running around here like some goddamn ice princess. You've got to have it this way. You've got to have all that. So I don't think it was.
No, I don't think it had anything.
Well, I don't think Helen's perspective, but
I don't think in that room, I don't think that had anything to do with Noah. I think it was a mother who has known her daughter for however old, 23, 24 years, and know that she can be whimsical. She can be up and down. She can be hot and cold. And so before you commit to this marriage, see, that's what Helen was looking at. Not before you have this wedding, before you commit to this marriage, or let's begin with some basic things. Are you even in love with this man?
I don't even think that I never got that Whitney was whimsical about this, because Whitney lived a life
about the marriage.
Yeah, I didn't think that girl was whimsical. I think she suffered a lot being with Colin. Was so unlike what they had groomed her for. From that hole of an apartment to all
I don't know if that's true. I don't know if that was true about him being, from what I think when we're talking about grooming, are we talking Helen and Noah, or are we talking about Margaret?
I'm talking about Margaret, and I'm talking about how Whitney showed up. The Whitney we knew.
Yeah, having been with Fur Cat and man, Scotty. Oh, I can't ever remember.
Yeah.
So let's talk about who she's been with. Scotty. She's been with Fur Cat. So I don't know that this is about Whitney not being whom they groomed her to be with. Nobody was.
Well, my point is that Colin wasn't. Colin was more normal and stable. If anything, all of these other men. It's like Scotty was.
I know, but you said I don't. I think it had to do with that. Maybe it wasn't who they groomed Whitney to be with, and then Colin, and then their lack of money. And I'm saying he was by far the most normal of the men she had been with. Mm-hmm. Both of those guys were older and inappropriate. So it always seemed like Whitney, like to your point earlier, was fighting against. At the same time she reveled in the expectation of a Margaret, she fought against what she thought was some expectation.
Well, my point was, I didn't think the wedding was. I didn't think it was whimsical.
Not the way Whitney is whimsical. I just think she was just whimsical. She was hot and cold, up and down. There was a moment I was thinking, this girl got some bipolar issue, because when she was so different. And then there was a moment too when I thought Margaret might be entering some dementia. Those behaviors were too in contrast to each other. Mm-hmm. In one moment she said, I should have never sent you in here to Helen. You are no help. And then she walks out the room and kisses her on the cheek and says, I surprised you. I was like, okay, what kind of crazy is she dealing with today?
Yeah.
And then she gets downstairs and say, oh, I'm so, I love you so much that you all are my children. Like, these are not your children. But it was like, okay, what is going on with Margaret? But I think there's just some high level.
There was memory there, though.
High strung. Yeah.
Yeah, but there was memory there, because
her children, she has one child.
Yeah, but there was pain. It's like she hadn't forgiven Helen for, I guess marrying Noah. I don't know. And then you're bitter because your husband, your husband is burlapped. This burlap ribbon that has literally tied this man to a chair to keep him seated during a wedding, right? Mm-hmm. So then there's some bitterness and there's some disappointment, because this was a man who was the man in her life, and now it's like it's like a child, I mean, one day he knows you, the next minute, next day he's trying to run away from you. He doesn't know what's going on. So I think a lot of that was present too, because there was a lot of pain on her part.
So I'm glad you are my children is what?
Is just, I've got all, this is what I have.
That's
kids,
my legacy?
the kids, the kids, the grandkids. I mean, this is what I have. Because
I would appreciate the legacy of I don't know. I just found Margaret to be she's like Whitney to me, is way too hot and cold. It's way too much off and on. It's not a consistent personality. Mm-hmm. And I don't know.
Consistently unpredictable.
Yeah, I don't know what the hell that's about, but that is way too much.
Yeah.
So if anything, I can see why Helen wanted to get the hell out of that house. I tell you that. And if she thought Noah was any semblance of normal, then I could see why she ran to him, because those people are greatly
they cost you a lot.
Not normal.
Yeah, they cost you much. They really do. They really do. And so then so we're part 2. That was Joni.
Oh yeah, okay. I think we've kind of going through a whole lot of other things, but Joni was too.
Oh God, so not necessary. So not necessary. So I was shocked that Noah was the owner / proprietor of the lobster roll. What the hell? Why was that even necessary?
I think there had to be, in order for 20,053 to make any sense, there had to be a connection to Noah. There had to be a Joni Noah connection.
Ridiculous.
I agree.
A writer.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
And I think that's why we got a little bit of the Me Too, as best I can understand it. That's why we got the Me Too story. Okay, so Noah probably did not have his 3rd book released. He had gotten the advance. He had written a book, so he had fulfilled his obligation. The last of his advance paid for Whitney's wedding.
But he still needed cash flow to buy the lobster roll.
Yeah, he did. What I'm saying is that, so we meet him where he is no longer probably thinking that he's going to be this great writer. So now his focus is back on his family. He and Helen are going to reconnect. He's going to build bridges with his children. So why not go to Montauk? There's no book. There are no publishers. Helen doesn't have a job. So there's this big house in LA she probably sold, if we could just use our imagination. Mm-hmm. So go back to her home. That is her home. But yeah, the lobster roll, I don't know, unless there was just a little bit of Noah who always wanted to hang on to a little bit of Allison too.
No.
I thought that was true, and let me tell you why.
No.
Because you're saying no to what I'm saying? Or no?
Yes.
No, because at the very end, when he is dancing to the song that Whitney had at her wedding, he's at the place where Allison was killed. He just visited Helen. He's at the place where Allison was killed, and he's dancing. Oh, we hear the music, I should say.
I did not think that was the place that she was killed.
Yeah, to what? To Whitney's wedding. So I think maybe and remember that he owned the lobster roll at some point too, didn't he? Didn't he and Allison buy it at some point?
Allison bought it while they were married.
Yeah, so I didn't find it all that strange. I just thought maybe it was a return to some simpler ways of doing certain things. And I was thinking, well, it's not like Helen had a big job that she had to leave. It's not like he probably was being extremely successful in publishing. So let's go back to this place where I would imagine that they managed to keep Bruce and Margaret's big, beautiful home. They probably, all work to do that. And let's build family here, even if we got to do it with these crazy psychopaths, because I think that was part of the conversation Noah was having with Colin when he was talking about his dad and getting his mom on a plane. Like, and at the end of the day, he said, they're crazy. We're crazy. We're batshit crazy, he said. And we can be hard on each other. But at the end of the day, when stuff hits the fan, we're family and we show up. Mm-hmm. And so I think, with Bruce, and knowing that he was going to deteriorate. In fact, he died the next year, according to his gravestone. That they probably went back to Montauk to help with him, and that Helen and Noah was reconnected back in Montauk with Margaret. God bless him. But family is family. Mm-hmm. So, I think it's still a little bit of Noah was still holding on to Allison, not in a way like, oh, I love it so much, I want to hold, just holding on to a moment in his life. It became very clear to me when Allison was killed that a lot of that relationship with Noah was settled. Like there would always probably be some affection there, mm-hmm. but that his relationship with Allison was settled. Mm-hmm. So I just think that he didn't come away with any ill will for Allison. And maybe that was, the place they'd met. The place, if you really think about it, though it was tragic, maybe, started him on another path, a descent to have an ascent, Mm-hmm. So, I don't know.
That was cute.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know. I got nowhere else to go.
I ain't got nowhere else to go. Your downfall can be your uplift.
Yeah. Yeah.
That the very same thing we think is our destruction can be our elevation.
Yeah, I agree.
So I thought it was, when I saw Joni coming into there and seeing Noah, I was like, so we had to go through all of this.
It was weak
to get to that moment, because there had to be a moment. This is what I know, where Noah met Joni. That just had to be, or it totally would make no sense. Mm-hmm. So it was all about this future thing. And so Noah gets to speak the wisdom of having lived to be 79 years old, or however old he was at the time. So yeah, I think it was about I'll tell you what I found surprising about that conversation was the things that Cole said about Allison.
Yeah, I found that shocking.
Yeah.
Especially since in one of the episodes this season, when she first came back, and the box with all of the clippings with Ben in it, mm-hmm. and all of that, and Joni had mentioned that he seemed to have an obsession with this person, mm-hmm. and so still thinking that Ben was responsible for killing her and all of that. Mm-hmm. It was different from what Allison spewed out about. Joni spewed out about, what her dad had actually said about her mother. Uh-huh. And that also explained, because we were trying to figure out earlier on, why was she so venomous? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so that explained, because if your father's constantly telling you that
she was crazy, I tried to help her, we were better without her.
Yeah.
So I was like, that sounds...
Which did not... It just was...
It didn't make sense. Like Cole.
Didn't sound like Cole and didn't make sense.
Unless that's what he needed to tell himself in order to get...
But that's fine. He needed to tell himself. But I know it didn't get lost on the Cole that we knew, that this would also destroy and embitter his daughter. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Because it's like, it's one thing for you to privately not think well of your ex-wife, but it's another thing to put that kind of burden on a daughter who clearly her mother loved, in spite of and in light of her own condition. You know what I'm saying? So that didn't seem like the Cole we knew.
It didn't seem, and it didn't make even sense with Cole when he learned of his father, who had killed himself when he was 10, and then he had all of these conflicting feelings about his own dad, yet when he went to meet a woman who had a relationship with his dad right before his dad returned to his family, that it gave him some sort of peace. In fact, it gave him or it was the catalyst for Cole going back to Montauk, wanting to reunite with Allison.
You're right.
When eventually he learns that she has died. So somebody who has been through all that hurt and trauma at the hands of the parents' behavior or relationships, it didn't make much sense. I found that hard to believe, that Noah has to be the one that gives Allison some peace, and enables her to return home to her husband, to her children, to her family, and then to depict Cole in a way that just that didn't resonate with who we knew Cole to be. I will say that didn't seem to make a lot of sense to me. That she's crazy.
That was one of the things. So that was disappointing for me because that didn't fit with the characters that we knew. And because there's not another episode,
Yeah, and I guess and I know what time is short.
All right.
But we haven't said anything about Eddie James Ula, who EJ winds up being the son of Sierra and Vic.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was
different. That's what that was.
That's a different way of looking at it. I will tell you what I was pleased when he said Helen was like another mother to me, in that at one point I'd lived with Helen's parents in their house, and I was thinking, all I can remember is thinking, thank God Priya did not raise him. That's all I said. Thank God Priya did not raise him, and that Helen was very involved in his life. It probably saved him greatly.
Yeah.
Though I would imagine that Sierra at some point grew into her role as a mother. And she had the little boyfriend. Mm-hmm. She was all cuddled up with at the wedding. Mm-hmm.
It was interesting too with Eddie that it made more sense of him with his trauma theory, and he had spoken to Noah in depth about all of that. So his need to connect with Joni, it made that make more sense. Mm-hmm, his firsthand experiences with all of that, because life with Sierra was a bounce.
Early on, I'm still gonna go back and defend Sierra, a young woman as a young mother.
Well, yeah, and so that it gives more credibility to the bounce. I mean, she's bouncing. I mean, Helen ended up being a second mother because of that bounce.
And it sounds like, I guess Noah said he was like a nephew to me, so I guess Helen was like a little auntie Helen, and.
Well, you think about it. So because as we've imagined, they were married, and so there was stability. And he said he worked construction summers, in Montauk, which leads credence to what you were saying about they probably went ahead and lived in the big house, and all of that. And Margaret prophesied about children, so she didn't realize that she was getting all in sharing. So maybe that was some of that too.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, so I'm glad they made a little sense.
Yeah, and then we, I wrote down, so it was trauma versus resilience.
Yes.
Yeah, and so I'll say that was a lot in that little conversation with Joan and Noah. I'll give it for what it's worth, but how he was giving all the EJ takes on it as my nephew, and he says there's trauma can be passed through generations, or it's resilience, and so it was Allison's resilience that you got. It was a little too much for me.
It was,
but that's your girl Allison, so it was Noah.
I don't know when it became my girl, but I'm gonna just let her have this.
Noah trying to help out Allison without taking down Cole, but eventually helping Joni. So I think it was really. I'm gonna say this as time is getting short. It was about love. It was about love, and love in all of its form.
Yeah,
it was about love. Even the Allison's episode was when you let love take the reign, and not love in that fictional fairy tale kiss a prince, you live heavily ever after,
kiss a frog
turn into a prince, whatever the hell it is.
Yeah,
not that kind of love, but in a real
the joy of it, the pain of
all
it,
of it,
yeah,
all of it. So here she is, and I thought something Noah said really was beautiful about. Because this is often my thought about it. At the end of the day, you just want somebody. First of all, you want to have lived your life having loved and having been loved. Okay, that's one thing. And then you want to have known that there was someone in this world when you have passed through who knew you well.
Yeah.
And so for him, that was Helen.
Yes.
For Helen, that was Noah.
Yes.
And I think in telling that story that really got to Joni, and I must say I thought it was really beautiful, was, are you going to live your life this angry and this mad about whatever you think your mom didn't do, whatever you think your dad did or didn't do, or are you going to go and build something with somebody who's already present, your husband and your children?
Mm-hmm.
And so I was, I think that was all, for that moment, and handled, though it was heavy-handed, I'll give you that, a little bit too much in
syrup.
Too much in a small space.
Syrup.
You can appreciate the sentiments.
Cane syrup.
Yeah,
thick,
you can appreciate
rich,
the sentiments.
and dark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll agree it could have been done differently, but hell, we were always going to see Noah and Joni, and if we had to, then, why not get a 79-year-old Noah speaking some wisdom?
Yeah.
It's all I can say.
Yeah, that was good.
As opposed to, I won't even say that.
Yeah.
So anyway, I wanted to just make one note. Margaret lived to be 100 years old.
Oh my God. A century of
Margaret, yeah. And Margaret and Helen died in the same year.
Oh, I didn't realize.
So I was wondering if maybe they were in an accident or something. Yeah, 2051. And I thought, again, something you said earlier, one of the episodes is like, I wonder if it's going to be a finale like 6 Feet Under, where we kind of see how everybody transitions out of this life. And though, the kids were certainly alive, we would gather, we would assume, and Stacey wrote the book, but we did get to see a lot of
completions.
We did,
so to speak,
when people died. So, that was it. That's the end. That's the finale. So, Hercules. I'll say that. I didn't get to say that I was glad that Helen and Noah got back. I would have been happy had they not gotten back together, if they had just gotten to a place of mutual love and respect. But I must say, I was excited about the reconnection. I was.
Yeah, and then it was also sweet that Whitney came off of her high horse and got everybody together.
Oh, we didn't even say that.
And they went to the motel room to, I guess, bring the wedding,
the top of the wedding cake.
Yeah, to the dad, and that's when they discovered Helen.
Mom was already celebrating that wedding.
Get busy. And rather than being shocked and appalled, they sat down and began to pass the cake and champagne.
Yeah, even Stacey at 12 years old taking a shot to the head of the champagne.
She got her drink on.
All right.
But it was really sweet that
sweet.
They were going to wait until after they finished.
Thank goodness.
To crash that party.
Yes.
And so we did see a coming together there.
Yeah. And I thought that was I thought about that. I was like, that was loving in the beginning of healing, just all across the board. Yeah. And that's what I talked about earlier about forgiveness. When you let some of that resentment and anger go, how healing can begin. I'm not in the pie in the sky. It's all going to be great. Mm-hmm. And I didn't even get to talk about how I absolutely hate the phrase forgive and forget, because oftentimes you can forgive without forgetting.
Yeah.
But you can move past some things, and you can put some things into their proper places. So seeing those beautiful children sitting outside as mom and dad reconnected, just waiting their turn, I thought was very sweet.
I thought it was honorable.
Yeah.
It was all of that. And then it brought you back to season 1.
Yeah.
When their love making and their loving was always present and passionate. It wasn't and because it started off with lustful. It was always loving.
Yeah. And that's when they were like, hello friend.
Okay.
And the love making began. So, Gwen Girl is giving me all kind of emotion. So I'm Ann Renee,
and this is Gwen Girl.
We'll see you next time
for Modern Love.
Bye.
Bye.